Trump's program, if he follows it economically, including the tariffs, tax cuts, and everything else he proposes to do economically, will spur inflation, and he will betray his own base.
President Donald Trump's golden age has begun, with orders to send U.S. troops to its Mexican border, drill all the nation's oil, and issue pardons for the January the 6th rioters. For Democrats, it's going to be a long 4 years. Well, I'm joined now by Sidney Blumenthal, the former senior advisor to President Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, who coined the term the permanent campaign, where political leaders prioritize the electoral ramifications of their actions above all else. Sidney Blumenthal, welcome to Times Radio.
Well, glad to be here this morning in Washington.
Yeah, well, yeah. Good morning to you. Good afternoon to us. Look, you're no fan of Donald Trump, but does a part of you have a grudging respect for his vision of a golden age, a kind of an America that can do absolutely anything?
Well, this is not simply a golden age as he's declared it. It's a gilded age, a second gilded age. He was surrounded by his designated oligarchs who have enormous influence over his administration and control the social media, arrayed in seats before his cabinet, which showed the caste hierarchy of power around him. So it was a spectacle. It was a marketing genius yesterday, but it was also a fundamental attack on the basic American constitutional order at the same time.
From this side of the Atlantic, the opposition to Trump looks confused, badly organized, somewhat shell-shocked and in disarray. Are the Democrats anywhere near being an effective opposition, making the case that you just spelt out and taking it to its logical conclusions?
Well, certainly not in the short run. The Democrats are in a minority in both of the houses of Congress and obviously don't control the presidency. And in the third branch of government, a right-wing conservative majority reigns. So the Democrats are out of power everywhere. On the other hand, in the long run, that should be their strategy because Trump owns it all. He has responded to crises that do not exist and is creating problems in response to them. We don't have an energy crisis. We actually have a quiet border. But most important, inflation has been quelled. And the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has stated so. And that's why he is lowering interest rates. But Trump's program, if he follows it economically, including the tariffs, tax cuts, and everything else he proposes to do economically, will spur inflation, and he will betray his own base. So the Democrats need a policy and a strategy of time and patience, in my view.
If there's currently, if inflation is currently quelled and the border currently is quiet, which of course, the whole Republican case on various fronts obviously disputes that. What are the chances of him, sort of failing and then making these things worse and making these things identifiably worse that Democrats could then campaign on? Or will he just refuse to be sort of constrained by those bounds of reality, whatever he does?
Well, if you read the editorial pages of the Wall Street Journal, you'll see what a conservative business feeling is against Trump's economic program. If Trump were like Eisenhower and simply did nothing, inheriting an economy that is, according to The Economist on his cover some time about a month ago, the envy of the world, he would do well. But instead, because of his fundamental demagogic belief and a need for grievance and retribution, he believes, as he stated in his inaugural address, that the country's been betrayed. And by instituting his policies, he is actually creating the problems that will lead to crises, particularly in the economy. If he left it alone and did nothing, then the economy would purr and go along at the highest growth rate without inflation in the world. But instead, he is proposing and advocating policies that will jack up inflation. The Democrats need to wait, time and patience, the policy of General Kutuzov in War and Peace, and see what Trump does and wait for the results. There is a cause and effect here for Trump. In the meantime, there'll be enormous damage to the Constitution and across the board to many people. And the Democrats need to do whatever they can in the federal system, particularly in the states that they control, like large states like California, New York, Illinois, and so on, to mitigate the damage.
If Trump's program is bound to fail on its own terms, as you say, where does that leave him in relation to the permanent campaign thesis? Is he conducting his own permanent campaign rather badly if in 4 years' time, presumably he can't run again as president, who knows? But for the Republicans generally, in 4 years' time, if they are going to be sort of shown transparently to have failed, where does that leave their electoral prospects then?
Well, we have a congressional election in 2 years. We have two gubernatorial elections this year, and those will be signposts to what's happening and whether or not the Democrats are in serious, serious trouble. They are in Virginia and New Jersey. Those are both serious states, and we'll see how those go. But we'll see how the Republicans have a one-vote majority right now in the House of Representatives. It's going to be very difficult for them to pass anything for a while. And that is why Trump has reverted to executive orders and as a substitute for legislative action. It shows the inherent weakness. While he claims an enormous mandate, he won by a very small majority, 1.5%. And the Democrats need to get the Democrats back. And they have campaigns in 2 years. They have two gubernatorial campaigns this year to show what they can do. And they are out in the states as well with action against whatever extreme measures that Trump seeks to impose. So there's a good deal that can happen. And my surmise is that Trump's actions on day one, many of them are deeply unpopular, especially his pardons of the January 6th violent criminals and paramilitaries who participated in the insurrection and the prevention of the peaceful transfer of power in 2020. But that, if anything else, reflects Trump's guilty state of mind about that event.
Well, look, finally, I'm interested in knowing what you thought of the spectacle of former Democrat presidents and senior figures from the Clintons to Barack Obama to Joe Biden himself being present at the inauguration, valuing the peaceful transition of power, all that kind of stuff, precisely what Donald Trump was not prepared to do when the shoe was on the other foot. Have they, to some extent, fallen into a trap, or have they avoided a trap? It's very hard to know how else that could have been played.
It's the opposite of a trap. While they might dread being with Trump, they're showing their belief in not only the peaceful transfer of power, but also a belief in the Constitution as a whole. And they're making a demonstration and a statement. And so it's not simply that it's normal, it's a political statement in itself that contrasts with Trump's break with the Constitution. And it provides a contrast. The fact that they sat there and said nothing itself is a quiet statement of belief that is parallel but opposite to what Trump was saying.
Thank you very much indeed, Sidney Blumenthal. Sidney Blumenthal, of course, a journalist and former advisor to the Clintons.